and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek. I'm Siobhan Holt, the Deputy Editor of PRWeek UK, and I'm joined by two experienced non-executive directors. We have Alison Clarke, who, after 25 years in the fast lane, holding senior roles at leading agencies such as Weber Shandwick and Grayling, now runs her own consultancy, Alison Clarke Consulting. I'm also joined by Michael Murphy, who, like Alison, has held top leadership roles at Grayling and Weber during his comms career, and today he advises a range of agencies, including Lodestone and Action Global. So thank you both for joining me on this episode. I understand, though, you both know each other, right? Have you worked with each other over the years, mentioning those agencies there?
Certainly do. Certainly have.
Yeah, we know each other very well, and we're still in close touch and do things together, which is great. So friends, I would say, as well as old
Absolutely.
colleagues. Alison, is that fair? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. So it can't have been all bad, can it?
No.
And Alison says that because what we're going to discuss today is not necessarily the most positive side. There's going to be some tough discussions that we're going to have. We're going to chat about how to reposition your agency during difficult times, and whether that's having discussions around client fees or how to deal with restructuring or even redundancies. Let's begin with my first question, if you don't mind. Before people get to the tough decisions, how do they first spot the signals that an agency needs to reposition?
Well, I think it's a good idea for any agency to review their value proposition periodically anyway, because it's a very fast-moving environment out there. What was fit for purpose last year may not be this year and next. So I think one should be reviewing and looking at the competitor set and where the market's going. So that's the first thing I would say. It's good discipline, good business discipline. But I think then looking at one's own data about number of pitches, one, where success is coming from or otherwise, whether revenues are going down, and if they are, why they're going down, understanding the commercial dynamics of the consultancy and having some grown-up conversations about whether that's purely the macro environment out there or whether there's something that we could be doing with our own offer that makes it more relevant, broadens it, hones it, makes it more specific, and introducing better practices so that we improve our chances of success. So I think it's a whole bunch of commercial things going on there that any leadership team should be looking at and reviewing and then acting accordingly.
I agree with what Alison has said, Siobhan. The market's changing, clients' needs are changing, and the world is changing. So I'm more of a fan of continually evolving and innovating. You shouldn't suddenly decide that you've got to reposition, although sometimes that can be appropriate, but that would tell me you've been a little bit asleep at the wheel. It's often too late when you're waking up and say, I've repositioned. And if you actually are evolving all of the time, I think that is better. So for me, that's more important. I think the need to reposition is because, as Alison says, revenues might be going backwards, profitability is diminishing, you're being less successful at winning new business, and you're maybe losing clients. So you're becoming less relevant to your clients than your competitors. But to me, repositioning speaks more to the marketing. And if you've got problems, Siobhan, you need to look at a complete reorganization or a reinvention.
Do you think, though, that maybe some reasons today might be that an agency repositions could be more consolidating divisions or even investment in new specialisms or AI?
I think all of those are good reasons, Siobhan. I think that, as we discussed, staying ahead of the market and your competitors is really important, and identifying what's working for clients and being able to follow the money. Quite a few agency owners that I come across are a bit set in their ways. They've been successful in the past. They've made a good living. They worry about changing too much and doing things differently. They could be overwhelmed by all of the things we talked about, like social, digital, AI, and influencers. But I think rather than be overwhelmed, you've got to embrace the changing scene, and you've got to surround yourself with people that can navigate and win. So I think client needs are changing a lot, and we've got to go with that.
I would also add on that if an agency decides that they need to be in a new area or a complementary area to their offer, I've seen some great success stories with investment hires with a proper business plan around it. But actually, you do need to make that investment in order to actually get ahead of the curve or keep with the curve. So I think understanding where the agency, to Michael's point, can evolve to and what it takes to get there is, again, a very good discipline to be on a business agenda on a regular basis.
On that point, Alison, what are clients looking for? Clients are definitely looking now for an integrated offer where they can go to a one-stop shop and get strategy, really strong creativity like it used to be only given by ad agencies. They're looking for social, digital, they're looking for experiential, they're looking for all those skills underpinned by strong C-suite relationships and the ability to improve corporate reputation, understand public policy. So the market's definitely changing and client needs are changing.
And all that does is put a lot of pressure on the agencies or the comms professionals involved, doesn't it? You mentioned there about increasing fees, and I just wonder, how do you know when to consider increasing your fees? What are the signs that leaders should be looking out for?
I think that increasing fees should be a business discipline every year. I mean, your team are going to expect to earn more, hopefully, next year than they did last year. And the cost of doing business for all of us, the cost of living, it goes up. So I think our industry can be slow in being as commercial as they need to be on a regular basis. I've discovered on occasions in the past where someone's doing exactly the same scope of work for exactly the same fee that they were doing 5 years ago. But guess what? The cost of doing that has gone up significantly. So that's the first thing. My experience where there are issues is around fees, and it's around the discipline of the process of arriving at those fees, the scope of work, the deliverables, the KPIs, and the outcomes. So I think it's about good process and staying on top of things. And the only other thing I would add to that is that I encourage any agencies I work with to make sure that commercials are on their agenda. We rock up to meetings absolutely well prepared to deliver for our clients, as we should, but there are occasions when we need to have commercial conversations. And if we've got the appropriate data and we've already got the discipline of the scope of work and there was a mutual understanding of what we were going to do, my experience is that clients are business people and they respect their consultants if they are also behaving like business people. So I'm all for mutually rewarding relationships, and that means fees go up.
100% agree, Alison, with everything you've said. And if we're more commercial, to your point, clients will respect us more, and we shouldn't be working for clients that don't want us to make a profit and don't see the importance of us making a profit. I would just add one important thing. I hate the word retainer, Siobhan, and I wish we could ban it from our vocabulary. To me, a better description is a fixed fee for a defined program of work. And I know that that's a bit of a mouthful, but it's actually much more accurate. You have to be really specific about what is included in that fixed fee, and very importantly, what's not included, and what is included both in terms of hours and in the scope of work. And you have to then be able to be clear about what might be an extra and charge for it. And the way you start in that relationship, as Alison says, is the way you should finish. You need to be very clear from the start about what is included and not included. And we're not commercial enough. We should not apologize for being commercial, and we need to improve our commercial skills as a sector. And there's lots of ways to do that.
And obviously we are in a period when clients are trying to squeeze more out of a very tight budget. What is the best strategy then to limit that extra work that you mentioned there creeping in without damaging quite a sensitive relationship?
The relationship should be built on mutual trust and respect. So, as Alison said earlier, being commercial and raising commercial issues should not put the relationship in jeopardy or make it sensitive. I think what we need to do is to not say no, but say we need to charge more for that, or we need to reduce the workload in some other area to accommodate your new request. And if we damage that relationship as a result of being commercial, frankly, we're working for the wrong clients, I think.
Would you agree there, Alison?
I would indeed. I mean, you might decide that you're going to discount based on volume, for example, but that would be a commercial decision. mean, the only thing I would say there is if you do that, make sure if the volume goes down, you don't forget that you offered a discount against certain levels of revenue. But I think non-negotiable is reducing your fee without either a volume discount that you've commercially decided you wish to offer, but just kind of racing to the bottom is the wrong way to go. And the only people who suffer are actually the execs at the bottom of the food chain, because they're the ones who are being expected to do too much work with insufficient hours, and you can't afford to put someone else on the team because you haven't charged properly at the outset. So I don't think it works. And to Michael's point, mutually respecting relationships are the ones that have longevity, lead to advocacy. And it's the client that says jump and the answer is how high, which is never going to be a profitable, meaningful relationship. And it's highly likely that the team working on it are not going to feel valued and probably don't enjoy their work either. So it isn't just about fees. It's about feeling valued as a professional. And I think that as leaders, we owe that to our teams, as well as the commercial benefits that properly feed work brings.
Procurement is becoming more and more apparent in our sector and more visible. And a lot of agencies say they don't like working with procurement, but we have to embrace procurement functions. At the end of the day, they're only doing their job. So we need to understand their mindset and their role in the process and engage with them and work with them. You need to have, as an agency, a good commercial partner as your head of finance or finance director. They don't have to be full-time and in-house. They could be outsourced and fractional, but someone who's a commercial partner rather than just a number cruncher. And it's also really important to train your staff in negotiating and commercial skills, because quite often we expose them to difficult client relationships where they're having to negotiate and they've never had any experience of doing it. So imparting those skills to the full team, I think, is important.
If a client then pushes back and asks for, say, a discount, how do you really demonstrate the value over the cost? What should be the non-negotiables as far as you guys are concerned? What should be on that list?
Well, I'd go back to what I said earlier, which is I think the non-negotiables are reducing your fee without any rationale or reason for it. If you promise the moon on a stick for an insufficient fee, the people that suffer are your team. And I think, as I've already said, we owe it to our team that they should feel valued and be valued. And picking up on Michael's point about empowering people by giving them the skills to negotiate, I think there are some simple techniques as well that we can share with less senior people to enable them, when a demand is made of them by a client, to professionally pause in order that they can go back and discuss it with their team leaders and then come back with the response. In my experience, when you look at those timesheets and profitability and it's all gone the wrong way, the leaky bucket, as I call it, is often just that friendly chat where the client says, that was brilliant. We love the 4 that you did. Could we have another 2? And the inexperienced account exec says, yes, because we're people pleasers. And the reality is you can teach people skills that enable them not to have to say no, because no one feels comfortable saying no, but actually to pause, to go and discuss and come back and propose. And that enables them to discuss with someone more senior who will then make the call as to what the fee should be on that, if indeed there should be one. So I think, to Michael's point, it's incumbent on us to empower our people through learning and development to help them in the commercial process.
I agree, Alison, and often it's the owners of the agencies who are the classic entrepreneurs, like I used to be, who are desperate to get the business and sometimes take it at all costs, and then it's the team that suffers, as Alison says. So I would always ask the question, is the client looking for the right partner agency, and I mean partnership, or are they looking for the lower cost? And if they're looking for the lower cost agency, then you should walk away from that. So it's how you mean to start kind of drives how the relationship then develops.
Absolutely. And do you have any tips for how you walk away from a client relationship without jeopardizing it or even the agency's reputation as well?
First of all, you try and persuade the client to increase their budget, or understand that you're over-servicing, or understand that the relationship's not working the way it should, or that they're not taking your ideas on board and your advice on board. But if all of that doesn't work, then I think you politely part company, but there's no harm in doing that because it's a commercial relationship. So I don't think you're jeopardizing anything. You're actually in some cases enhancing your reputation and enhancing your team's feel for you as a boss.
I agree with that. And I think disrespectful relationships, if you're brave enough to walk away from them, will earn you the respect of your team. And we've all had the client from hell who actually isn't respectful to teams at all, doesn't value what they bring. And the brave leader who says, it's time to call time on this relationship, I think stands head and shoulders above those who just expect their teams to do anything at any time for any cost. We always used to have a saying, which is, does it make us happy, rich or famous? Is it great work? Is it bringing commercial value to the consultancy? And might it be an award-winning campaign? Now, ideally, you would like it to be all three. But if it's none of those, then the chances are you need to have an adult conversation. I had an example once where a particular point person in the client organization was making the team's life hell. And so we decided that this was not acceptable because it was disrespectful to our colleagues. And when I sat down with the senior person, which I wasn't particularly looking forward to explain that this was not because we didn't want to work for the organization, but that this gatekeeper had made my team's life impossible, it was very interesting that the senior person I spoke to, had already identified that this person had those characteristics internally as well as with us, and moves were already afoot to actually do something about it. So what I was dreading as a very difficult conversation ended up aligning with what we had said. And indeed, we continued to work with that client because the common denominator was the person, and they had plans to move them on. Now, I know that's not likely to happen all the time, but I think being brave is important.
Being brave and not procrastinating. Don't hold back on difficult decisions, whether they relate to clients or staff.
And you mentioned there, Michael, difficult decisions. I'm just wondering then what your thoughts are then as a leader. When should you consider restructuring your team, which can be quite a difficult decision for some?
Very difficult. You know in your stomach, Siobhan, when the time is right. But the important thing is, as I said, is not to procrastinate or delay. I came across someone recently who delayed a difficult decision for a year and a half, and it was killing her business. And now she's done it, and she feels as if the weight is lifted off her shoulders and she can start afresh. So don't hold back. When it's not working for you, when it's not working for your business, when it's not working, as Alison says, for the team and the colleagues, don't hold back and make some decisions. But if you continually evolve your business, and if you set standards for your team and you've got a strong culture, then often things will resolve themselves, and people who are non-performers will leave of their own volition. That's easier. If you end up with the need for a bigger event, then it's probably because you haven't evolved and dealt with things as you go. Unless, of course, you've got a massive client that you've lost, representative of a large chunk of your revenue, in which case sometimes you have to have a situation where you have a number of redundancies. But generally, in the independent sector, you should be able to deal with it as you go and make difficult decisions as you go. That's my experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As you say, if it's not working, it's either because you've lost a huge client, as you say, Michael, or the way the market's evolved and you haven't evolved with it. Hence the importance of what we said earlier, which is keeping things under review constantly. If it's not working, then you need to make the right decisions. And the only other point I would add to your excellent points is that if there are a number of things that need to happen, deal with them all. It can't be death by 1,000 cuts. We'll do this and then we'll put off the next one, and then we might do that later on. You have to make the decision and bring it all to the team, have a proper program of communication around it, and make those decisions earlier, because everyone ultimately will respect you for it. Again, it's about being brave.
And how should you handle the comms then around that restructure? How honest should you be with your staff?
Well, I think it's important that you are open and honest. Obviously, there are going to be things you can't share, but if you've lost a huge client, then everyone in the consultancy is going to know that you're working your notice on a large client. If the market dynamics are such that you haven't evolved sufficiently, then I think one would want to message that we are going to be reinvesting in areas that will make us future-proof. So whilst you can't tell everything, I think if you can give the commercial rationale behind it, people are more likely to, first of all, respect you as leaders, hopefully worry slightly less about whether their job might be the next to go because you've explained what you're doing and why, and have your door open and be open. The worst thing you can do is have a period of radio silence, having messaged something inappropriately or poorly. So yeah, I think open as you possibly can be, communicate clearly, and make sure everyone understands the rationale behind it.
I think that's all so important, Alison. And at the end of the day, if you're making decisions about cost savings, it's your duty as the owner or shareholder or representative of the shareholders to protect the company and to protect the majority of staff and the investment in it. So sometimes you have to make difficult decisions. On communications, Siobhan, I've always been a great believer in communicating openly about the financial performance of the business in good times and bad, because you're expecting the team to deliver for you. You're expecting them to raise their performance when things are tough. And I think we're in the communications business, and it's what we would advise our clients to do. So I think open and honest communication about good and bad financial performance and the issues the company is facing gets people on side and motivates them, and shouldn't scare them away if it's communicated well, but actually motivate them to be on side and to try harder. So I think that's really important. And obviously you make decisions about letting people go and making redundancies after you've explored all the other options. And those other options include looking at property costs and looking at other spending costs. People obviously should come as a last resort if it's about economic issues. If it's about performance issues, typically my experience is that when you let someone go because of performance issues, it's a relief to them because they were kind of expecting it and they weren't happy in their roles and they were struggling in their roles. But it's also a relief to the rest of the team because they are expecting you to be a tough but fair manager. And why should they work very well and very hard if someone is not performing next to them? So it's a relief for them and a relief for the person who often has to be let go.
You both mentioned there some key factors. Is there anything else on redundancies that leaders should keep in mind?
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts on that. I mean, first of all, you need to be on the right side of the law, which goes without saying, but one does read stories of horror stories occasionally. My experience is, you need to be open, show empathy. I would suggest considering a support package for people if you are making redundancies, to enable them to get the best counsel they can have in seeking their next job. Certainly, if you're having to part with senior people who may be very long-serving employees, for whom the prospect of refreshing a CV and going out into the marketplace might be even more scary. So I think about ways in which you could support them. And I would also just add that I think it's important the right person delivers the news and stays with that individual or those individuals. Of course, HR, people, departments are very important, but don't hide behind. I think, you need to face up to the fact that if it's you that needs to have that conversation, and it probably is, depending on where in the business you're taking people out, then you've got to stand by your decision and you've got to be there for that person. So I think, do the honourable thing. And if you can meet that person at a conference 5 or 6 years later and then shake your hand and look you in the eye and know that you did it the best way you possibly could, then I think that's a job done as well as possible.
That was spot on, Alison. I think at the end of the day, Siobhan, you're dealing with human beings. They've got personal commitments, they've got families, they've got mortgages. And to Alison's point, HR is an enabling function, and it's up to the boss to deliver the bad news and to be upfront about it. It's been hard for me over the years to let go quite a lot of senior people in my career, but I'm thrilled that actually 90% of them are still friends and often come to me for advice. And that was the way they handled themselves, but also I hope the way, to Alison's point, that I handled it and she would handle it too.
And would you say as well, be swift on your decisions? Because obviously this is impacting people's lives as well.
I think often there's a bond between particularly senior people, and there's also a reluctance by bosses to sometimes go ahead and make tough decisions when they know it's the right decision, and to give people more time. And I think, of course, it's right when there's a performance issue to go through all the stages of giving people more support and more time and giving them coaching and pointing out where they're going wrong in their roles and trying to help them to improve. But when there comes a point that there's no going back and it's not working, then you should be very decisive and quick in making a decision, because it's going to affect the rest of the team. It's going to affect you as the boss, and it's going to affect clients and the company's performance. And you've got all of those groups that you have to look after, and you have to look after the greater good of the business and not just one person or a couple of people. So looking after the rest of the staff, the shareholders, the clients is important, as well as treating someone you have to let go properly and humanely. And as Alison says, with a support package to help them on their way.
I agree. And also, I think if someone's performance or indeed the revenues under management are not where they should be, the final conversation, whilst it should be made with appropriate speed, having given them the opportunities, as you outlined, to improve, it shouldn't come as a big shock to them. Because if you've had a dialogue with them and they know that there are some commercial imperatives here that have to be met in order for this investment to continue, it shouldn't be a horrendous shock to them. So I think it's the dialogue beforehand that should enable, should you get to that point where you have to let someone go, be something that is not expected, but not a huge shock. And I agree with your point, Michael. As a leader, you're there to support everyone in the consultancy. So yes, we need to exit someone elegantly and fairly and humanely. But as you said, we have lots of other people's lives that we need to be cognizant of and are within our gift to support. So I think that helps leaders sometimes when they've got that difficult decision or that difficult conversation to realise they're doing the right thing, because they're responsible for everyone else as well.
And you mentioned there, Alison, the other members of staff. How do you then, once you've made these decisions, boost morale, reassure the staff, and maybe manage some survivors syndrome, in quotations there, those that have carry on with the work? How do you keep morale boosted?
Well, I think it can be a challenge, but I think, again, as we would advise any clients, it's about keeping the communication lines open. So don't be an invisible leader. Keep people up to date with what's going on. It's worth considering mentoring or a buddying scheme internally if you don't already have one, just to check in with people and make sure that they're feeling as good as they possibly can. No one's going to be happy to see colleagues go, but I think actually making sure you've got the internal communications or point people to it to help them. And also, I would say it's really important that they don't see a drop-off in learning and development. Now, it might be if you're having a challenging time that you can't outsource it the way you might have done, in which case you need to make sure you have that provision created internally with your senior team so that people don't feel they've lost colleagues, things are going in the wrong direction, and no one's investing in them as an individual either, because they will vote with their feet, and that's not what you want. So within the bounds of what is affordable, make sure that the people who remain have regular communication and feel the corporate love and investment in them. That will help.
100% right, Alison. And just adding a couple of things, it's amazing the number of comms agencies that I come across that don't have a clear vision for their business. They might have a proposition for the market, but they don't have a clear vision for their business, and they don't have a business plan. So I think at any time that is important, and at any time it's important to communicate it to the whole team. But in a time when you are downsizing and reducing, it's really important to be able to say, as Alison touched on earlier, this is our vision and our business plan for the future. We've had to make these tough decisions now, but this is how we're going to change, reorganize ourselves to face the future in the changing market. And this is how we're going to succeed. And I totally agree about communication. You can't do enough of it. One-on-one communication, really important, and checking in with people on a one-on-one basis regularly to make sure they're feeling okay or feeling as good as they could be. And celebrating the wins, big and small, because as you go through these situations, something that might have seemed a bit pedestrian as a client win or a winning of an award a few months ago will become ever more important to celebrate it. And when things are tough, you should always try and have some fun. that's so important in this business. It's a tough business. Enjoy it as well as being professional.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Celebrate success and avoid radio silence.
You mentioned there, Alison, about, you don't want more staff leaving or exiting. And I just wonder then, how do you keep your A team? What specific, maybe non-monetary actions can a leader take to protect or motivate their talent?
Well, I think it's about them feeling that they have a career path and progression with you. Most people want to enjoy the work that they do, but they also want to see that it advances their career. So I think even if it comes down to quite a granular individual program for your A team, as you've described it, as Michael has already said, one-to-one communication. Sometimes it can be a question of reviewing who their line manager is. Sometimes at a delicate time, they might want a bigger slice of you as the leader because they feel they can learn from you. I'm not suggesting that one undermines the structure that you have in place, but it might be that you need to give some more to those people right now for them to feel that you want them on side, you want them in your team, and you can help them build and develop their career. So it's bespoke, make them feel special, and devote the time and the energy to them.
And that vision and plan becomes ever more important because you're looking for that A team to be helping you deliver that vision and plan. So they need to feel bought into it. I know it seems very basic, but a very clear job description and a clear indication of what their role is in that is something that sometimes is forgotten about or gets out of date and needs to be refreshed. I think flexibility for senior people is important and trusting them to take responsibility. So that's a non-monetary benefit, but a lot of founder owners take time to trust their senior people and they should just let them go, and often they will do things better. My business has only took off when I had my own agency when I employed people that frightened me, that people that stood up to me. So I think surrounding yourself with senior people is important and giving people independence. And it's kind of monetary, but it's not really monetary, is giving them some share options in the business. So it doesn't cost any money to give them those options. And if you ever decide to sell or merge or even just pay out dividends, they can be beneficiaries of that. So giving them a sense of ownership in the business is also important, I think.
Okay, that's all the time we have today. Thanks to Alison and Michael for your insights. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, then we'd love it if you could leave a review, please, wherever you access PR Week's Beyond the Noise podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening and goodbye.